I'm just going to give you a couple of short things, and then we can get back to the project. One thing that I forgot to tell you about, and it's actually a really useful tool. The last time I was talking about graphics was it's a way of changing the quality of the model lines in your cross section or your plan or whatever. So here we have a section that's made only of model elements. It's got no annotations at all in it. It's just a concept stage section. But before we get into annotations, you can actually change the line thicknesses of the model lines, and this is something that I always forget about, but I just remembered, so I'm going to tell you about it anyway. So what you can do is we can select this roof element, for example, and once we select it, we get all these modify things at the top here. And one of these tiny little buttons in here is called line work. And if I click this, I get the option to change any of the line work on the model element here. So I can change the wide lines to thin lines, for example, as I go through. Or I can change to invisible lines. Let's say I want to make these invisible for some reason. And yeah, I know this is, and I always forget about it because I don't work in detailed views so much outside. But it's actually a really useful tool to have. So you can, before you start dealing with the annotation stuff, you can actually modify the quality of the model view, so you don't have to do so much work on it. So let's just say if we change this to thin line, this to thin line, it doesn't make so much difference for this view, but if we change it to 1:50, for example, then you can see that you can start to change the quality of everything in there.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. Super awesome. Okay, that's just something I forgot to talk about. What I want to start talking about today is schedules. This view here is just a section box through a proposal, but what I really want to talk about is how to set up area schedules to start off with, just to get everybody thinking about schedules, and then I think I'll set up a wall schedule, just to show you how useful it is and how to control it and how to start thinking about it, because it saves you so much time when you're trying to calculate costs and all that kind of stuff. And it's really what Revit is set up for, because Revit isn't really a design program. It's more like a registration of the design. So you already have to have the design thought through before you start setting it into Revit if you're going to be effective about it. Yeah, that's one way to think about it anyway. Also, I'm not feeling so well today, so if I start to drift off into strange directions, just humor me, okay? Don't ask me any hard questions, okay? All right, so we have, here's a plan of a house. I'm just in plan view, just in a plan view. So this is just a normal plan view. And in here, because it was for a client, I set up so that the floor surface was displayed as a model texture. So it seems like that there's some kind of surface on the floor because it was for a concept drawing. I think I put some shadows on because this is actually quite a descriptive way of telling people, this is a three-dimensional object rather than just a plan, because many people can't actually read plans. If you show this to people, they look at it blankly. They pretend they know what you're talking about, but they don't at all. So as much three-dimensionality as you can get into your plans at concept stage is always a good thing. And that's also the reason for doing stuff like this, where people can imagine themselves in the space there. This project this was an existing house over here on the right, and then they wanted an extension that came out like this. So it was just to show them the connection between the two. So anyway, back to ground floor level. Now, if we want to make a schedule of areas here, let me just see if we've got the annotation crop on the view crop on. Let's just leave it as the full thing for the moment. We go into the architecture tab, and over here we've got something called room and area. And the one we use most of all is room. And if we've drawn the plan correctly, all the rooms should be enclosed by the walls. So if I click on room, I can just run the tool over, for example, the kitchen here, and you can see that the cross lines are finding the edges of the room for us. So I can click on that, and it's automatically calculated the area of the room. I can do that again down here. and then we can do it up here and do it here. Okay, so it's calculated the room. It's given us a floor area, and so now we want to show the room type in there. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to change the, let's just move this out here so I can read it. The color scheme over here. So you can actually update the color scheme in the individual view you're in. And this is a view-based thing. It's not. It won't. You know, it won't repeat itself into other views. You can do it per view. So if I change the category here, we'll change the. We change the color scheme to rooms. Apply. Oh no. This is one of those ones where I've got it set up with very complex settings, so I can't remember exactly how I did it. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start that again with another project. Some of these projects I've got set up with many complicated settings. I'm just being so clever that I'm kind of confusing myself, but I can't remember how I did it, so I'll do it with a simpler one over here. I'm going to have to edit this video so I don't look so stupid. Okay. Okay, here you have one where I've already got it kind of set up. So I'm going to continue and continue this this color scheme setup. So I'm going to go back into the room, do the same thing again. Just find the utility room, we find the hallway, we find the WC, and this is the kitchen down here. So it's set up like that, and I've already got a room legend set up. And the room legend relates to the color scheme that we have set up over here, which is based on the name that we have. If you don't have a legend set up, you can go into Annotate, and you come all the way over here to where it says Color Fill Legend. If you click on that, it will just give you a schedule of the rooms that you have set up in the scheme already. Okay? Yeah?
It's rectangular, your legend, but normally it's square.
I modified it, yeah. You can modify all the graphical settings to it. I'll get into that in a minute, if I can remember how to do it. So then we can, once you've done that, you can see we have all these rooms have nice colors on them. They've got the correct title and so forth. They've got the correct area. These ones don't. So we need to modify the legend, and it's easy enough. We just click on the legend. Click on the legend, and then this edit scheme option appears at the top here. And once we go in there, you can see we've got control over the colors. We can add extra rooms. So let's add a room for the kitchen. Okay, and it automatically gives it a color. A pretty ugly color, but we modify that afterwards. We'll change to utility room. Change to what else do we need? WC, and we can see we already have a hallway set up, so we press OK. So now we can go back to the individual rooms, find this little cross, and if we come over here to the properties, we can change it to the type of room that we wanted. So we change that one to the kitchen, we change this one to the utility room. This is going to be the hallway. And we need to find the WC if we can find it in here. 2 square meters, yeah. WC. So you can see that, you know, we can because these two elements, the hallway, have the same category, we can then calculate out exactly how much hallway space is in this house, and we can make a schedule of it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the colors, because students, when they first start using this stuff, they usually have the grimmest looking plans, because they're all full of purple and pink and all kinds of stuff. So it's very, very important for the sanity of the teachers that you modify the colors. So let's just edit the scheme here. And what you can easily do is, once we get in here, just click on the color scheme, and let's just tone it down. I mean, you can change, I would probably change it away from that pink color if I had time, but let's just tone everything down so it's not popping out of the page too much. This one as well. Apply that. So So now it starts to look a little bit professional. Okay, so you have a kind of a color scheme for it. And you can see that the room legend at the top here, it automatically modifies itself to update based on the amount of elements that you put into it. Okay. So that's one thing. I won't get into the graphics of the room legend right now, but because I want to get into scheduling is the important thing today. So that's the first thing we've done. So it's actually the important thing about Revit and BIM in general is that everything that you put into the model, you don't have to repeat anywhere else. When I was working on hand drawing stuff, we used to have to go around and measure all these elements and then calculate the floor areas on a piece of paper and then write a schedule on the side here, you know, telling how the amount of time you save just by getting Revit to do everything is incredible. So we might as well take advantage of it. So now we're going to make a schedule of the floor areas. So over here in the project browser, let's just close down all these drawings. We have schedules and quantities as a paragraph in here. So we can right click on schedules and quantities and just say new schedule of quantities. So in here we have an option to go down to a room schedule. We should have. Let's have a look. Rooms. And we need to choose, well, I've got this project set into phases, so I'm going to just change it to the existing phase. We don't have to worry about that for the moment. That's okay. And now we can add the elements that we want to display in the schedule table. So we want to have an area, so I've added that in. We could put in anything to do with finishes. You could actually specify the what is the paint on the ceiling, and it'll give you an area. You know, what is the floor surface, what is the area of the floor surface, and so on. All this stuff can be added to these schedules, so it quickly calculates out what you need to do. So the first thing we need is the name. So we get name, area, height of the room. We could put in occupancy, which has a, it has a value when you're talking about either ventilation or fire and so on. We can put in the perimeter of the room and add that in. So you can basically put in anything that you think is going to be useful for talking about the project. If I press OK, then we now have a schedule of areas based on the names, but also with some extra information in there. Usually the perimeter information is not that important, but it depends what's going on in there. Okay? Once you have a schedule set up, it works exactly like a drawing. So I can go into one of my sheets down here. I can't remember what I have on these sheets, but let's just open it up. Okay, we've got a big plan here. What's on this one? Nothing. What's on this one? No, there's not so much stuff going on in these plans, but anyway, let's go into the section view then, which doesn't have a section on it. But the idea here is we have a sheet. So once we have a room schedule set up, we can just drag it in and place it on the sheet, and then we can kind of play with the graphics of it a little bit until we get it more or less to the way we want it. Let's just stretch this out like that. But the important thing about this is, like everything in Revit, if you modify the design, the schedule will automatically update. Okay, so that's kind of the benefit of schedules. Everybody with me so far? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So that's the first schedule. So just to give you a further idea of what we could do with it, I'm just going to make a wall schedule. So I'll go back into it again, and it's exactly the same process. I right-click on schedules and quantities, new schedule of quantities. And this time, I'm going to choose walls. So we have the option of choosing the category for the schedule down here. And the reason there's a category is that, different types of elements have different requirements for what, people need to know about them. So I'm going to choose the wall schedule. I'm going to change it back to existing again. Press OK. And in here, I'm going to choose area. We can also put a cost parameter against the walls. I'm going to put in a count. An account just means it's going to count the number of walls I have. A lot of this stuff you're never going to use. I don't even know what this means. Extensions buffer 1. What the hell does that mean? Who knows? Let's forget about that. We can put in fire rating. If we had one assigned to the wall, we could put in a fire rating as well. We can also make our own parameters to assign to the walls. So you can really add anything you want. And I'm going to put in a type of wall as well. So I've got these 4 elements I'm going to put in there. I press OK. So here's all the walls in the project, and I can see actually there is a fire rating on some of them. And I've given them some strange names here, Snirting of Eye Interior. So obviously I wasn't going to, this was just a sketch project. But this kind of list is what you get. But this kind of list is kind of useless because it's got so much stuff in it that that you can't, yeah.
What if for some reason, like, you don't have anything in your list?
Then I'll come over to you in a second. All right, I'll come over to you in a second. But let me just get the theory of this down as well. Okay, so we've done this schedule, and this is kind of like the raw data, but we want to organize it so human beings find it useful. So if we go back into the wall schedule, we can always come over here to the right and edit the schedule again. We've got these 5 buttons over here, and these 5 buttons relate directly to these 5 tasks, or 5 tabs along the top here. So I can really click on any of these buttons. It'll open the same dialog box just at a different tab, so it doesn't really matter. So we've got the fields. I won't talk about filters right now, but sorting and grouping is what we want, because we want to sort out these walls according to the type of wall that we have. So I can just press sort by type, and I can put in a footer, which means it's going to give me a title, it's going to count the number, and it's going to give me a total of it. And I can press OK, and it organizes the walls into the different types of walls that are existing in the project. You can see here. So foundation, different types of foundations, exterior walls, and so on and so on. So that's the type one. I can go back in again, and let's just actually, before I do that, let's go back to the bottom here. It has totaled up all the different types of walls, but it hasn't given us a grand total. So this here, 15, this is a calculation of all this type of walls. If, for example, we didn't want to see, each one individually named, we can go back into sorting and grouping. We can switch off itemize and press OK, and then it just gives us a list of the walls, and it counts them without itemizing each individual one. That's another way of doing it. We can also go back in here and edit, and if for some reason we wanted it to total up the entire amount, I press OK here. It gives us a grand total of 81 walls. It doesn't give us any useful information there in this specific situation. 81 walls doesn't mean anything. You can't do anything with that. But in other situations, it makes sense to have a total calculation of all the walls in there. In this case here, I would say you probably want to itemize every instance, and you don't need to have a grand total, because you just want to see how much of each square meter that you use in each case. Is that okay? Does it make sense so far, even though it doesn't work for you yet? But we'll talk about that.
How to make Revit show grand total?
Yeah, that's back in here. So you go into sorting and grouping, and then it's just this little tick box here. And you switch that on, it'll show grand total. Okay. Now, there's a lot of stuff. You can go in, you can change the shading of it, you can change the border type, you can do anything to it that you can do in a table in Word or Excel or something like that. And you can change the font types and everything. So you can graphically, you can set it up according to your office style. And usually what happens is that it gets set up by the IT guy, and it's part of the template that you get when you start a new project. So everything comes out in the office style. But you can play with that there if you want to get into all that kind of stuff. Again, we can go back into a view, and we can grab the wall schedule, and we can bring it in to the view like that. It's a possibility we should probably have a bigger sheet of paper here, but we don't need to have it in one long element like this. Okay, what we can actually do, if you can see here just down the side here, there's a tiny little break symbol. You can just see that there. If I click that, it's going to split it into 2 pieces, and then if I click it again, it's going to split it into more pieces. So you can actually, and it'll keep it ordered, so you can split it until it fits on what you want it to do, and then you can put it in place. Seems to have overwritten itself a little bit, but anyway, we can play with that later. Okay, I just want to start everybody thinking about schedules, because once we get to we're talking about structures and Revit structures and the construction parts, it actually just makes your life so easy. You're not counting things outside. You're not relying on horrible programs like Sigma to count stuff. You can actually get Revit to do it for you, just kind of automatically. It's not a very easy to understand system. In that this system over here, where you have to go into edit and you got fields, then you got filter. And they don't make it easy for you to understand, but there's just a couple of tricks in it that you just have to get your head around, and then it can do things for you. The other thing it can do is you can calculate. You can make it do calculations for you. So you can multiply the number of walls against the cost price, for example, and you can actually make it to do very complex calculations. Again, it's not a very simple setup as to how to do it. So it's easier to do it in Excel or even with a calculator sometimes. But if you're one of those guys that gets into this kind of stuff, you can get Revit to do it for you as well. Okay. The last thing I want to say to you is this is also where we can get Revit to count the number of drawing sheets we have, so we don't have to do it ourselves, because the list of drawing sheets is one of those important legal documents that you usually have to send out with every package, just to ensure that everything that you send out is correct and you're telling people correctly what you're sending out. There's no mistakes and whatever. So there is a specific tool in here under schedules and quantities, and it's called sheet list. So just say new sheet list, and again it's the same process. We need to add things like you can add checked by, designed by, drawn by. Okay, that's maybe a little bit too much, but anyway. Paper size is useful. Sheet name, sheet number. And that's probably okay. If I press OK here, it's got a list of all the drawings within the sheet, and again we can just take that and insert it into a dedicated sheet. In that case, I would say new sheet A3, and we set up where do we do it, a sheet list 2, drag it in here. And we can also arrange the position of the numbers and the names and everything within the schedule itself, simply enough by using the fields tool over here, where we can move it up. Let's say we want to move the sheet number up to the top, and then we want to have the sheet name directly afterwards, and maybe we want to have the paper size directly after that. If I press OK, it just rearranges it for us. So it makes more sense to have the drawing number at the front. Let me go back into the new sheet thing, and it's been rearranged for us. Okay, does that make sense? That's pretty much all I want to say today. The rest of the stuff is just work. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.